Yeah, thank you. Also, warm welcome from my side today here. And as Stefan already said, we are going in more detail here on our strategic initiative, Lead in Business. For the next 45 minutes, I would like to stress 3 points. First of all, give you an overview why we focus on Lead in Business within the group, and it's a group-wide initiative. Second piece is share our ambition level in Europe, T-Systems and here in T-Deutschland with business customers, and go a little bit more in detail on the external business of T-Systems, so the T-Systems market unit performs and the outlook moving forward. So what you should take along as a key message, I think 5 points. First point is, Lead in Business will tap the significant growth potential which we see in the business customer segment. The second point is we have a clear differentiation based on the network quality, on security, Tim mentioned it this morning already, cloud experience and platform approach, specifically on Industry 4.0 or Internet of Things. And we, as a provider here inside Germany, in a footprint in Europe, we are probably the only provider who by 100% can comply to the data privacy legal requirements which we have here in Germany and Europe. To the third point, T-Systems, I'm totally aware that we haven't delivered to our commitments in the past. And the market conditions still will be challenging over the next years. However, and Tim mentioned this morning, we started a master plan in 2014 called T-Systems 2015 Plus to really reshape the company in 5 major areas. And one is a very clear focus on profitable business, which also means we will not sign any deals which are not at a certain kind of profit level. Secondly, sustainable bring production costs down, which I'm going to share. We stopped unprofitable businesses, portfolio elements, contracts, and also countries, where we had a very clear exit strategy. We have a new setup in the company with 3 units, with a different kind of structure. We have a very clear focus on telecommunication, IT, and the growth areas which we call digital division, and also a very clear end-to-end responsibility. So in the end, we are able to really have a full P&L responsible for those 3 units. And we have a new leadership team on board with a proven track record on execution. With those measures which we have taken, and that's point number 4, we will grow the external revenue above market growth, and by the way, changing the revenue mix in this business is shifting to much more profitable business in the future. And the last point is TSI in total, so that's the T-Systems market unit external business plus the internal IT business, will be self-funding after 2016. And in 2018, the TSI market unit business will reach then an adjusted EBIT of 7%. So with those key messages, I'm going into the market trends to give you an overview where we are. So 3 major trends. I think if I would describe it, I always say everything goes into the cloud, everything becomes digital, and everything gets connected. It was more or less the summary of the discussion and the presentations this morning. And if you look at those 3 big trends, to give you some facts and figures behind it, on cloud and IT transformation, business customers increased their investment in the last years. So from 2013 to 14 by 54%. It's now 1.2 billion on cloud transformation. So you see that the trend into cloud is moving up, but 57% of those customers prefer German-based data centers. So the data which is stored into the cloud is important. Normally, what you don't do is you have public and private cloud environments, so you really look on where is my data located, which also means the data center location is becoming a differentiator in the marketplace. On 25% of the German companies, they more or less said, we want to have a national cloud, even if we have to pay additional cost. So that's also a point. So my take out of this discussion, and that's what I'm sharing a little bit later in more detail with you, is differentiation is location and presence in a certain kind of market. Applying to the legal requirements on data privacy is a differentiator in the marketplace. Digital business models. So 3 out of 4 manufacturing companies in Germany, specifically in the small and medium area, say big data as a success factor for their business is extremely important. 40% of the CXOs in Germany, for example, rate digital transformation as a very important agenda on IT. So companies, and that's the summary, companies who don't transform in those digital kind of business model, as you can imagine that the mobile device is now also a device where you make business, will fail in this existing or changing market environment. And there's a huge demand for open platforms which really enable an efficient business-to-business to consumer kind of model, and also have to include analytic kind of services and data sharing kind of services. So most, and by the way, doing those kind of data, what I always say as data roaming kind of platforms, you have to ensure that you comply to German and European data privacy rules. Then on seamless international connectivity, so the share of mid-market companies operating in more than 6 countries, in Germany, for example, was 20% 2013, will be 33% in 2016, which is an 18% per annum growth, which also means I think there is a much more higher demand on international telecommunication. Bandwidth demand will increase, specifically for enterprise VPNs, which are growing by 7%, and Ethernet services, which will grow by around 12% CAGR over the next years, which also means for us, one global contract, one solution for fixed and mobile. That's more or less the fixed mobile convergence, which we are seeing also on the business customer side. So what would it mean in numbers? Even if we see a moderate growth on the overall ICT market of only 2.9%, you see the main growth drivers here on cloud, on digital business, and on international telecommunication services. There is a difference, for example, if you look into the cloud market, there's no difference between enterprise customers and SMEs anymore. So they're all growing by around 20% CAGR, so no differentiation anymore, which was, by the way, the case in the past. On the digital business side, what you see is there's a difference in industries. On the automotive side, for example, we see growth for digital business models of more than 80%. 82% is currently the number. It's more or less driven by different kind of mobility services in those industries. If you look at connected car or car-to-go kind of concepts, the automotive industry is in a tremendous change in their business models, which is driving connectivity, different kind of models, platform sharing. If you only think on autonomous driving, for example, in the future, the exchange of data between different kind of OEM suppliers becomes extremely important. That's one of the reasons why we are in heavy discussions with the automotive industry, as we are market leader in automotive, to really focus on enable them, which also means big data, who's storing the data, who's roaming the data, becomes extremely important. M2M and all those kind of activities are underlying kind of services which must be on those kind of platforms. Then on the international telecommunication side, you see it's around 3%. However, unified communication is growing by around 8%, and Ethernet services, like Ethernet Connect, for example, around 11.5%. And that's more or less the market condition. If you now look on our strategy, how are we going to tap on those growth areas? And Tim showed this slide this morning. Lead in business is one of the elements where we are going to focus on. And now I would like to share what is the business we are talking about inside Deutsche Telekom, and we probably never reported those numbers so far. So currently, the business-to-business segment is responsible for 23% of the overall revenue inside the group in total, which means, I think in numbers, 14.5 billion generated across all segments. So segments is really T-Systems Europe and T-Deutschland, so TDG. From a competitive perspective, if you look at the different competitors in the marketplace, global players, European players, we are already leading from a European market perspective. Globally, we are a good midfielder, which, by the way, gives us a real good starting point in moving forward. So if you look from a segment perspective into the business, we are covering more or less the whole business customer environment base inside Deutsche Telekom, which means multinational companies, around 1,350 companies, but also millions of customers in the small and medium enterprise segment of Europe and T-Deutschland. So then on the right side, if you look at the split in the different kind of segments, so T-Systems market unit, we have a very good balance between IT and telecommunication services. If you look at Europe and T-Deutschland, for example, you see that we are much more telecommunication centric. And by the way, that's also the opportunity which we are talking about. First of all, how do we leverage more or less synergies which we have inside the group to grow on the IT side in Deutschland and also in Europe, but on the other hand, also on the international telecommunication side, how can we improve to better position ourselves inside international telecommunication growth within the group? So what would it mean, and how do we approach the market then in the different kind of segments? First of all, we create, if you look at Europe, we have started to create bundles of fixed, mobile, and cloud services, which makes it, by the way, much easier for customers to deal with us. So it's self-management, it's automatic kind of provisioning, it's carrier-grade security built in an overall solution, easy to use for customers, and even easy to order for customers. And some of these will be shown in the presentation a little bit later. On the international product launches, we are going for cloud VPNs, M2M coverage, best coverage for M2M, new innovative go-to-market models together with partners, and win with partners is one of those topics. So we don't do everything by ourselves, but we involve partners in the overall delivery scheme which we are doing there. Growth is anticipated by around 12%. CAGR until 2018, and Claudia Nehmert will go tomorrow in more detail on how we address the market in Europe. Then on the German SME market side, same kind of approach more or less, one-stop shopping experience for business customers, same kind of bundling of offerings like in Europe, but focusing a little bit on IT cloud, M2M, Deutschland LAN, so that we really have a modular kind of offering in front of the customer, but always bundled together with telecommunication services. For example, in connectivity, fixed mobile access services, cloud PBXs, LAN services, but then coupled together with office, mail, security, video conferencing, storage out of the network. That's more or less the story. By the way, this works. We have seen it in Germany here already in 2014, and we had a tremendous good development in IT the last year. So we'll even see more product launches at CeBIT, which is in 2 weeks from now. So 400 million additional revenue out of IT for Germany. Nick-Jan von Damme, also tomorrow in his presentation, will go a little bit more into detail. Then on T-Systems, I think it's the transformation program, which I'm going into more detail now in the second part of the presentation, but it's more or less driving I think the international telecommunication service forward, and then also in non-labor intensive IT services, creating growth, and the growth should be around 3% CAGR, which is above market in the moment. So until 2018, that's our growth aspiration for T-Systems market unit. So what are the key differentiators? Trust was already mentioned. We are by far the most trusted brand here in Germany, but also in Europe. Security was another extreme important kind of topic. Experton, for example, which is an independent analyst, made a survey, and the statement was very clear. We as DT are setting the standards in terms of security. More than 1,500 security experts within the group. We have a security operations center, and security will be built into the network, so that's a clear differentiation factor. Quality, we are at an all-time high on quality. The trim currently is 84 points, which is really the customer loyalty segment, and we are significantly above the normal benchmark. I think if you look at competitors, the average is around 68, around 70. That's the number where we see currently the competitors. So on connectivity, best network was already shared, and Nikian will go a little bit on more detail. In Germany, PANET was already discussed, so our Pan-European Network Initiative based on IP will make us as DT the technology leader, not only in Eastern Europe, but also in Germany on the network side, and Claudia will share this after my presentation, what's our strategy on PANET. So on the platform side, open platforms are key. We have two good examples. One will be shown, it's the KiwiCon platform this evening at the dinner event, and I only can encourage you to look at it. 30 companies are already working on this platform and providing services in a way that we really can deliver business to consumer experience to customers. On connected car, which was one initiative which we started 3 years ago, which had a very slow start because all the OEMs tried to do it by themselves, but connected car is lifting off. Yeah? So in the last year, we are now, and started really in 2014, we now have more than 1 million cars on the platform. We are working with Daimler and also with Volkswagen, and it's still growing very rapidly. Then on cloud, I think we are ranked cloud leader. Experton ranked us this week, specifically as the top-notch full-service provider for cloud offerings. By the way, we have in the meantime developed a partner ecosystems for public cloud solutions, which I explain a little bit later, in a much different kind of model. In private cloud, we are market leader in Germany and under the top three providers in Europe. And by the way, the differentiating point is, that DT is the only player currently here in the European market who really has an integrated offer, public and private clouds, which really comply to the data privacy rules here in Germany. So with this, I'm switching over to T-Systems market unit and would like to start to give you an update on our performance. So, and as I already mentioned, in the past we haven't delivered, and I go through some of the KPIs which we shared with you on the last capital market day. So revenue growth, market unit, we promised a 2% CAGR, which we are not going to deliver or haven't delivered in 2014. So you see the number, 6.9 billion. So we are not on track. Let me share more or less the reasons what happened. First of all, we initiated in 2014, beginning of 2014, our master plan activities, which is really a paradigm shift because for the first time, we are willing to lose revenue, and we are proactively managing revenue out of our books, which doesn't fulfill certain kind of profitability measures for T-Systems. So we have two effects. One is deconsolidation, which was a 700 million ticket. We exited Italy. We divested the SI business in France. We made some revenue shifts because we still had some internal Deutsche Telekom revenue in our numbers to TelIT, and we moved ICSS, GNF, and the business in Czech Republic to Europe. So that was the 700 million ticket. Then we had another ticket where we really hard stopped contracts, which was 200 million. So we stopped reselling, and we stopped, and that's a detail now, 22 contracts in 2014, which counted in total 200 million of revenue. Even if order entry was okay in 2014, we overachieved our ambition level in order entry. It was not enough to compensate this shortfall based on deconsolidation and discontinuation of those mentioned kind of activities there. So on the profitability side, we promised around 4% in 2015. March last year, we promised 3% in 2014. We are currently at 2.3%. So we have a slippage in the transformation program, laying off people. The negotiations with the Works Council took a little bit longer. By the way, we achieved all the numbers of layoffs, but people will leave, and it was backloaded in the year 2014, will leave in 2015. So our commitment that we still make the around 4% number in 2015 still exists. So you will see the positive impacts coming based on the savings which we have achieved in 2015. So on customer satisfaction, already mentioned 84 points on TRIM. That's a good result. TelIT was mentioned this morning. 1 billion IT spend reduction until 2015 was promised. We are currently at 800 million, and we will make the 1 million number in 2015. So that's also green, by the way, with a very clear OPEX and CAPEX underrun in 2014. And on top, quality has improved in the group in terms of IT delivery. The major incidents, even if we had hard cost cuts, went down from 81 incidents in 2012 now to 10 in 2014. So what is the transformation program, the master plan principle? I think it's really three elements. It's about investing in growth areas with real scalable kind of services. So scalable platforms, cloud products, not labor-intensive business anymore for us, because we are extremely cautious that we don't start to more or less build an additional workforce in Germany or in high-cost countries. The second piece is transformation. So move from a more or less focus on reducing costs on the production side. So make or buy decisions, very hard make or buy decision. Whatever we can't deliver on a profitable, competitive way, we are going to source externally. So for example, we have divested the field service business already in Germany, EDS, and we are on the way to also divest the field service business in Spain, for example. And I'll share some numbers with you a little bit later. And we are shifting whatever we can shift from an old legacy IT infrastructure into new services, so more platform and standardized in our offering. And the efficiency measures are totally clear. It's all about cost reduction, efficiency, and every step we are taking there must be sustainable also for the future. On stop, very clear, all non-strategic assets are being removed out of the company, which means all unprofitable portfolio elements, which we still had in our portfolio, contracts which are not profitable enough, countries, no more loss-making countries until 2015 was very clear and is a very clear target. So we have a clear exit strategy on countries. As a result, and that's on the right side. Very clear revenue shift, so much more growth in the future from 36 to 52%. Decline on the traditional business which we are in from 54 to 45. And then the stop piece, and we still keep a certain amount, 3% of our revenue in stop, as we still are in existing contracts where we are not able to exit. So that's a remaining piece, which will go away over the next years then. So, and even with this transformational shift, is 3% CAGR over the next years. So what are the areas we want to grow in? And by the way, it's nothing new. We are working now for 1 year on it, and I give you some ideas how we perform in the different kind of areas. On cloud, we have initiated a public cloud approach and a private cloud offering, which is already existing and running, by the way, very successful, more than 28% growth on private cloud. On public cloud, we made a decision that we said we are not going to build up a public cloud by ourselves. We are doing it with partners. We have signed agreements now with Salesforce, with Cisco, with SAP on HANA. We are in the final negotiations with Microsoft, but it's very clear that will be an offering where we don't do any kind of investments in. The partners are installing their hardware, they're investing in their own hardware in our data centers. We are taking over the employees, charging them back. So it's a cost-free kind of model for us. But we have agreed on a revenue share model based on our sales approach, for example, at Salesforce of 30%. So whoever utilizes the infrastructure, we get a 30% revenue share from Salesforce. The same on Cisco side, it's a little bit higher on Cisco side. So it's a different kind of model than you have seen in the past. No own investment, no CapEx spend for public. On private, we are fine. So what have we achieved in 2014? 2,800 contracts signed in this cloud environment, 300 million revenue growth. To give you a feeling on the current margin side, gross profit margin side, it's 24%. It was the year before, 2013, it was 15%. So you see that the leverage really works in this business. On the security side, security solutions, it's more or less a new portfolio. Also build it up with partner. RSA is one partner from the America with FireEye. We have more or less invested into a clean pipe enterprise solution, which is security out of the network, cloud-oriented, so that it's not people-intensive. 150 million order entry in 2014 alone. 36 million additional revenue. And by the way, profitability in this area is 23%, coming from 12% in 2013. So future workplace, that's something where we have invested in 2014, and it's more or less bringing the desktop into the cloud. I will show this solution during the dinner event, so I'm not going into details. We probably have more time to explain it over there. Gross profit margin in 2015 will be around 24%. We already have an order entry of 260 million achieved in 2014, selling this solution into the marketplace because there's high demand on virtualized kind of desktop solutions, because it's also reducing the cost structure inside the customer base. Then on future telecommunication, the push program on Ethernet VPNs, on corporate voice managed LAN, and dynamic unified communication, so unified communication delivered out of the cloud. Gross profit of 27% in 2014. And that's, I think, our traditional business, which is growing fast enough, scalable enough. If you then look at the total revenue ambition level, which we have for growth, I think you see it, 13%, from 2.5 billion to around 4 billion in 2018. By the way, with a profitability of around, in 2018, of 29% gross profit. That's what we are trying to achieve there. So then what have we done on the cost side? And on the cost side, it's at 4 elements: get people out, so labor costs down, consolidate infrastructures, optimize global services. It's really automation, standardization, concentration of services, and increasing the offshore quota. To give you a feeling, I think 6% of workforce reduction in Germany, 14% on top international, has, by the way, a positive effect, EBIT effect in 2014 of 25 million. In 2015 it will be 50 million. And you will see the effects on the restructuring program, which is still in front of us in 2015, with an additional 1,200 people of around 50 million. Consolidation, radical consolidation of data center locations. I think 2012 we had 89 locations with data centers. Target 2018 is going down to 11 locations. 18 are closed already in 2014. Another 26 will follow in 2015. A positive impact, EBIT impact, is around 100 million until 2018 based on this measure. Then optimize global services. That's more or less the service chain. 5 countries are closed, which is a positive effect of 10 million. Offshore quota is up now to, was 42% in 2014, will go up to 46% in 2015. Oh. Then on the stop side, I think portfolio contracts and countries, more or less everything which is labor intensive will move away. I said it already, EDS is sold, 500 employees. We are in the process of selling Spain, which is 700 employees, downsizing hardware revenue already mentioned. So that's a 200 million ramp down in revenue until 2018. Contracts, we have 22 contracts already finalized and optimized so that they are not loss-making anymore. 26 will follow in 2015. And yes, in some areas we lose some customer results, so gross profits in those areas. But if it doesn't count into positive EBIT number, we are even exiting those kind of contracts. So countries, Italy is restructured, France is restructured, Belgium, Japan, and Singapore are all done. So that's more or less the case. So we are ramping down the revenue in those areas. That's a negative development from the revenue side. On the profit side, this will help us to increase the profitability. Set up 3 units, already mentioned. We now have a very clear P&L responsible for telecommunication division, and the clear focus is grow the international telecommunication services across the group, by the way, because what we found out, margin accumulation is sometimes hindering us within the group to really be successful in international telecommunication offerings. So what we do is we have set up a deal board. We are going deal by deal through those kind of things, and the clear focus is here, grow the international telecommunication service business. On IT, it's restructuring and shifting to non-labor intensive kind of services, and the digital division are the new platform-oriented kind of models in healthcare, connected car, M2M, all those kind of things, where we don't have an own go-to-market. Yeah? We go to market over partners, so we will introduce channel management, extreme lean, only 700 people in this division, extreme lean, but high aspiration on growth in this unit. So with this financial outlook, what are those measures then doing on the number side? Revenue growth, it's around 1%, and you have to take in consideration, it's the revenue growth market unit will be 3%. Tel IT is a different kind of model. As I said, we are going to reduce inside Tel IT the cost structure for Deutsche Telekom, which has a 6% decline in revenue. So from 1.7 billion, that's more or less the number in 2014. So we are going for additional savings for Deutsche Telekom in our internal IT. On the market side, we will grow by 3%. On the EBIT side, we increase the EBIT over the next years by 43% moving forward, and it's more or less then as a result cash positive. I think the market unit will be cash positive from 2016 onwards. T-Systems in total, together with Tel IT, it's 1 year later, 2017. On the cash CapEx side, I think 1.2 billion in 2014. We are going to reduce our amount of CapEx spend moving forward, and it's really based on the efficiency which we are taking on the infrastructure build out. Tel IT is going to reduce the CapEx spend so that we even can reduce the internal IT cost. So that's the path on the CapEx side, -6%. And then on special factors, we will have a peak in 2015 because we are finalizing the restructuring program for T-Systems. And after 2015, what you will see is a 50% decline of special factors which we need for our business. So that more or less results then in a CAGR of -25% over the next years. As a result, ROCE is to expect it above WACC in 2018. So then from our midterm ambition level, that's more or less the summary. Revenue TSI, 1% CAGR expected. Revenue market unit above market growth, 3% CAGR. Quality market unit, we keep it at the level where we are in the moment. Adjusted EBIT margin in TSI around 6% in 2018 in total, which is all taken in mind. It includes T-Systems market unit plus Tel IT. Adjusted EBIT margin market unit, the external business, around 7%, and the adjusted cash contribution in TSI positive from 2017. Thank you very much.
Just one simple question. I'm following from the slide on page 10. Deutsche has agreed to take a strategic stake in BT. And from your slide, you basically show that BT is the only sizable of the incumbents that actually have a sizable IT business in Europe. So my question is pretty straightforward. It's pretty early stages at the moment, so probably you're not talking about synergies, I'm talking about corporations. But in terms of overlapping, in terms of product and geography with global services, where's the overlap and where there could be potential area of corporations to extract synergy or revenue and cost? Thanks.
I think if I only talk about service, yeah, because I don't want to make speculations that it makes sense or not sense. But there is an overlap in service because BT has more or less the same kind of strategy we have. It's a little bit more telecommunication centric, but there are overlaps of services and businesses which fits together because they have the same kind of point, global telecommunication services bundled with cloud services. So they're also working with Salesforce. They also have an agreement with Cisco in place. They have own, I think, cloud services moving forward. I think it's more or less the same kind of offering they are doing. And so from a, and by the way, when I look at T-Systems, and you know that we always in the past had a challenging question, how international is your company? And by the way, we are moving away to really play on an international, global kind of basis. Because my strong belief is we have a clear differentiation factor here in Europe based on the, I think, really environment's differentiation factor, which I mentioned. So we must be leader in Europe for telecommunication services, for what we are doing in the cloud environment, what we are doing on platforms, because here we have a very clear differentiation, which we don't have in America and which we don't have in Asia. By the way, if you look at the RFP process, which we normally face with customers, they normally structure RFPs in 3 different regions. So you get an RFP for Asia, you get an RFP for Americas, and you get one for Europe. And what we want is we win every deal in Europe. Yeah, so, and by the way, combining activities with BT will give us more reach on a global basis. But here in Germany, in Europe, I think that should be our homeland and our battlefield.
Well, thanks, Reinhard. And maybe let's move on. I think there was one question with Dominic Klarman from HSBC on the right-hand side over here. A gentleman with a light blue shirt.
Yeah, just a simple clarification. The self-funding goal for 2016, that is basically neutral EBITDA minus CapEx, and then positive from 2017.
Cash contribution positive at the T-Systems level for T-Systems in total in 2017. And as Reinhard said, for the market unit even before that.
Yep.
Next question, I think there was one in the back over there. Ulrich Rate, as far as I can see.
Yeah, thanks, Ulrich Rate, Jefferies. Two questions. Just one clarification on the 3% revenue CAGR. Is that explicitly including divestments and product curtailments? For example, you talked about the Spanish divestment. I mean,
yep.
that wouldn't be then sort of excluded for organic reasons. That's really sort of what we'll see as total. And the other question is, I mean, on this security and data protection, how do these contracts work, or even more generally asking, what are the legal implications if you find that your infrastructure has been accessed and you start losing data? Does that start to really increase potential legal risk and also really cash risks that we should really think about when this is also a big issue? The business is growing very fast, and the legal constraints are pretty strict, as far as I understand. How are these contracts structured, and what are the legal risks taking on this business on a grand scale? Thank you.
Yeah. So first of all, there's nothing where we are going to guarantee anything to customers, because that's not possible in the security or cyber security environment. So to really make it clear, what we do is it's a service which you as a customer can book, but without any kind of guarantees, so that we don't have any kind of financial risk on our side. It's because I think if you currently install security functionality by yourself, you also don't have a guarantee. And we avoid it in every contract that we make any kind of commitments that we guarantee security for any kind of customer. But by the way, we probably have a much better security system than every customer in Germany, because we are seeing much more in the network which is going to come, and that's, by the way, also accepted on the customer side. It's a unique combination of what we monitor in the network, what we monitor with our hotspot infrastructure, our honeypot infrastructure, which we have more or less around the world. So we see the viruses, we see everything already coming through the network before it hits the customer walls and the customer doors. And that's more or less the service customers are looking for us. But it's very clear, no kind of guarantees contractually from our side. So no risk involved anyhow.
And it's actually an opportunity because, as Reinhard said, we had basically 50% revenue growth from about 74 million in 2013 to 110 million last year for advisory service, but also for protection services for customers.
Well, thanks. I think the gentleman in the back with the white shirt.
Thanks. Thanks. It's Robert Grindel from Deutsche Bank, that is, not Telekom. A very interesting stat there on German customers who want a national cloud and prepared to pay for it. There's a difference between saying they'll pay for it and actually paying for it. Any evidence that that is actually happening, that they are forking out? And when customers think of moving to the cloud, are you finding that this is a risk insofar that it crystallizes the willingness to tender contracts to a wider number of operators than they would have normally? They might have gone to you as an incumbent. And in that regard, are the mobile operators in Germany, I suppose Vodafone in particular, encroaching significantly?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So first of all, and that's what I like to explain a little bit, because you don't have normally one cloud as a company, because you have data which you believe you shouldn't share in a shared environment. The cloud if you look at the cloud infrastructure, it's normally a shared environment. So whatever you can buy from Amazon, what you can buy from Microsoft is a shared environment. So your data is directly resides the data from your competitors, and that's what companies on critical data don't want. So they have normally an isolated environment, which we call private cloud. So everything moves into the cloud, but it's private. It's not a shared environment. It's dedicated for the customer. Non-critical data, for example, like email services, whatever, will go into a shared infrastructure, which we call the public cloud environment. Where you have an RFP process is on private clouds, where customers have specific requests, specific demand on how the data should be protected. If you look at public cloud services, they say, okay, I book it over the internet. So the principal idea is publicly, there will be no RFP. We said we don't want to compete like hell with all the existing players in the market, and there are 17 players offering cloud services, which are all American players. And you can imagine that even in email, in some cases, that was the reason, for example, for Daimler to make a decision to work together with us, that email can be also a threat because you are documenting something which you don't want to more or less expose into the market. So my point is, and that's what we have learned, they are willing to pay more as long as they are having a secure environment where the Americans don't have access, the Asians don't have access to the data. That's the reason why I say it's not only the location where the data is stored is important. So the model is that I'm, as Microsoft or Salesforce, are building a data center in Germany is not enough, because the operation must also be done by Germans. Otherwise, you have access from the US to this data. So our point was then to say, we use the technology of those players like Salesforce. They are putting their infrastructure into our data center. We take over the people from Salesforce onto our payroll, and we charge them back to Salesforce so that it's cost neutral for us. But this enables us to really fulfill all the data security legal requirements by totally 100%. So there's no access from outside into this data center anymore from a legal perspective, US perspective. And by the way, the last time where we talked together, it was 2012, thanks to Mr. Snowden, because that's more or less was the best marketing story for us on cloud, by the way.
Well, I think there's one more question over here on the left-hand side.
It's just a couple of questions. First, so Steve Malcolm from Arete. One on the self-funding comment, is that before special factors? And then on special factors themselves, can you give us a sort of idea of, what the 300 million you've got in 2018, what's driving that? Is that sort of ongoing early retirement? Can you dream of a day when there's no special factors? Maybe some color on the profile of the workforce at that stage that drives that 300 million and how you move on from there. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the self-funding is basically after special factors, i.e. inclusive, so really properly cash positive. Yeah? And the remaining special factors is that while we try increasingly to not take over personnel from other companies, usually traditionally the outsourcing, you easily take out in a bigger company 500 or 1,000 people from a customer. Yeah, in recent contracts, we have already managed to reduce that dramatically. We're one very big German company where we only in the region of 200 people will be taken over compared to probably in past times that would be probably more 1,500. Nevertheless, we will still continuously will have the need to lay off people, because if you take over personnel and really develop the economies of scale, there will be still a rest of restructuring what is needed every year, and that's why we said we probably need around about 250, 300 million as a run rate, yeah, in the plan.
I think there's a question here in the first row, Paul Marsh from Berenberg.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about the stop element of the business plan and the 10% of revenue which is unprofitable. How did that end up being unprofitable? Was it cost overruns or revenue shortfalls? I'm presuming it wasn't profitable. It wasn't unprofitable when it was signed.
By the, and I start with the comment, and then you can comment, because I think when we met in 2012, I said the big contracts, the big deals are unprofitable, and we had to restructure them. That's not the case anymore. So every big deal is now on the profitable side. We made some lessons learned specifically on unified communication. And that's much more complicated than we all had believed. I think moving a customer into a big enterprise customer into an IP world with IP telephony, integrating everything, in a very early stage has driven us in contracts where the product development, for example, Microsoft Lync, so we had, I think, products from Microsoft and so on, where the products were not ready, and the commitments by Microsoft to certain kind of releases and functionalities were not existing, but we had those contracts, and we had to deliver a service into those contracts. So we made a decision very clearly, in every of those unified communication contracts, where we are not able to turn it around long-term into profitability, or mid-term into profitability, we are going to exit. So every contract, existing contract, until the end of the contract duration, which will not become profitable, is going to exit. So it's really dedicated contracts where we don't see that we are not able to turn them around with new technology, where the customer is resistant to more or less help us together in new technologies to change the contract. That was a clear decision. And by the way, it's an ugly kind of discussion with customers, by the way, which we had to learn because we never did it before. So in 2014, we had a bumpy start on managing of those contracts. We now have improved because 22 are closed, 26 are on the ramp now for 2015, which has a positive impact on the EBIT number, on the gross profit number. They are still contributing a certain amount of gross profit, but from an EBIT perspective, those contracts are definitely not able to turn around over the lifetime of the contract.
Thanks, Reinhard. I think there's time for one last question. If I look around I think there's Guy Paddy here on the left-hand side from Macquarie.
Yeah, thank you, team. I just want to understand when you set up your business model with the aspiration of delivering both revenue growth plus margin expansion, because the history of the business would say delivering revenue growth is very hard. The history of your peers in the industry would suggest that they have contracted down to deliver sustainable cash flows rather than grown. So I'm just wondering why you chose a revenue growth target rather than saying, you know what, revenues are going to decline by 2 to 3% for the next 2 to 3 years because we're getting rid of all this unprofitable business, and then we can deliver cash flow positive and we can move on from there.
Yeah, Guy, I think it's two things. We have done that. So partly what Reinhard explained why we haven't grown the 2% in the last years but declined quite heavily is that we shed off businesses we don't really want, like Italy, France. There were aspects where we couldn't make any money, and exactly that's what we have done. But what we also see now is that in some of the areas, for example, if you look at the cloud, and I think Reinhard mentioned it, we grew revenue by 300 million from 600 to nearly 900, and at the same time we increased profitability. And this is because it's running off a standardized machine where you can really leverage economies of growth. And that's a little bit the whole idea of this revenue transformation, is that we're getting more into these standardized services where we can actually earn good money, grow there. And as you probably have seen in the transform area, which is more the traditional services, we actually want to scale down slightly further, and definitely in the stop area. Yeah, so it's kind of both.
Great. Thank you. Well, I think we have to leave it here if we want to stay in our timeline. But I think we had plenty of time for Q&A.
Good.
Reinhard, Thilo, thanks a lot. See you at the evening event, by the way. And we'll continue. Thanks, guys.
And by the way,
you lost your bottle of champagne.
Yeah, I lost my bottle. Yeah.
You know, the way we stay in the time limit, I do bets about bottles of champagne.
Yeah.
So that's the first one for today, which I already
won. So you will become drunk. Visit our presentation tonight, by the way, because it's interesting to see. There you can see live what we mean on cloud transformation.
They have no choice, and
Okay,
it's before
okay, that's
food.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Well, we'll move on with